Welcome everybody to episode 4 of Average Gamer, the podcast for gamers by gamers. I'm your host Sully, and today I'm joined by show regulars Grant and Joe. And today we're going to be covering a variety of subjects. The first one is poor end-of-year AAA title sales, the downfall of physical media, and how often do we finish our games. And today Grant's going to kick us off with our first subject, poor end-of-year AAA title sales.
Yeah, okay, so this subject came from an article I was reading on the Eurogamer website, which was basically asking the question as to why the big console releases of sort of late October, early November, why these sales were down compared to previous years. And this is specifically talking about the physical copies in terms of sales, because at the moment we don't, in the UK anyway, properly track digital sales anymore, at least for the major consoles. So I guess the article was raising a lot of points with regards to why the author thought that the sales were down. The things he mentioned were this idea of sequelitis, where people are tired of basically playing the same game just rehashed slightly. And another reason that was put forward was this idea that games are more of a service nowadays, where they have content added to them and people tend to keep playing them because they don't see a reason to switch. So I'm just wondering if there's any other points you guys wanted to make with regards to why you thought sales were down with regards to previous years.
Well, like I mentioned to you previously earlier when you said you wanted to bring this topic to the cast, and that was, there's one point that I think they missed in that article, and it was the fact that all three of these games, bar Watch Dogs, are first-person shooters.
Yeah. So
how many people or gamers are out there that are going to buy 3 first-person shooters all within a 3-week period? Yeah, I'm certainly not going to do it. Like, I don't think you guys would do it. It's ridiculous.
No, I mean,
you just haven't got the time.
No, exactly. We haven't got the time. People tend to pick. I think Battlefield was such a big release. I mean, I don't know whether Battlefield was mentioned as part of this, but I think a lot of people, like you say, chose the one game and have tended to stick to it. I think Call of Duty sales are down for.
I think they've been disastrous.
An obvious reason. Yeah, I mean, this whole very cynical way that they tried to package the Modern Warfare remastered, but only if you bought the Legacy Edition, I think that was a pretty bad move on Activision's part. That didn't help their sales.
It makes it tough as well, because if they'd sold it separately, it would have also probably subtracted again from Infinite Warfare's sales. I mean, I would have only picked up Remaster. I wouldn't have worried about Infinite Warfare.
Yeah,
me too.
But at the same time, I'm not going to buy Infinite Warfare for Modern Warfare Remastered. Like, I'm not going to spend the bulk of my money on a game that I'm not going to play. And just curiously enough, when you mentioned the poor sales of all three of these titles, but more specifically Infinite Warfare specifically, you mentioned Steam. Now, this data doesn't cover Steam sales at all, but even when you look at Steam sales for Call of Duty, it's a disaster. I think I remember back to at the peak of the series, which is, I think it was either Black Ops 2 maybe or 3.
Yeah.
Active user base and people playing that game at any given time 2 weeks after release was about 50,000 people. Now when you look at Infinite Warfare, it's between 5 and 10,000 people. So that speaks for itself. It's insane.
That's quite a difference, isn't it?
When you look at the drop off at the peak of the series between, I think it was Black Ops 3, don't quote me on this, I could be wrong, but it was around then. Each title after the peak has dropped off by roughly 15 to 20% in sales.
Right. Yeah, so most games will sell most of their copies within the first week. I guess that's true.
Yeah, first 1 to 2 weeks. And I think that's what we're seeing with Call of Duty. With its poor sales, it's not the fact that, yes, it is another first-person shooter, and it has released alongside another quality shooter being Battlefield and Titanfall 2. But I think Call of Duty specifically is just dying.
People are fed up of it.
You can
bored of it.
Yeah, you can reskin it 100 times or 100 different ways, but the formula's getting old, and you can only change it up so much before it's not Call of Duty anymore.
Well, this is what they've done, isn't it? They've put it into space now, and it's like, well, where are they going to go after this then? To the bottom of the ocean? I mean, there's nowhere else to go, is there?
Well, there's talk of them going back to World War.
Yeah.
Well, that might do them a favour because, we've got loads of science fiction shooters. Why do we need them to go into space? The whole point was it was set in reality, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was part of its selling point for me, at least, when I used to play it.
I played the very first one. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I played the very first Call of Duty. It was an amazing game for the time. It was so innovative. The fact that they had the realism was the biggest selling point of that game, and the fact that no other game that I played, because I played the PC version at the time, no other game managed to create that sense of, we've got these explosions going off, you've got tanks shooting at you, putting you in that kind of, like, you feel you're part of that, like you're a real soldier, part of that battle. Very, very intense. No other game had done that at the time. And it was very unique, and it was brilliant, the first Call of Duty. It
was like playing Saving Private Ryan or something.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, Absolutely. It was an amazing game.
What's funny is that you mentioned how it was cinematic and it was immersive and it was such a wow factor experience back then. And you look at it now, and that's one of the areas that Call of Duty gets slammed for. Like, it's set pieces and it's scripted events and it's cinematic scripted events. It's funny how it's kind of flipped up around the other way now.
Because it's not really changed, has it? It still requires...
No.
It's still like, right, you have to move to this point to trigger the next event. And it's all like... Someone described it as like shooting ducks, in the fairground, because a lot of it is still, enemies pop up ahead of you and you have to just shoot them, and then once you've shot enough you move forward a little bit and it triggers something else. It's all very
old game mechanics.
It's old, and I think that's the problem with it. I think we've moved on a bit.
I mean, we've got a little bit off subject, but like I said, I think the poor sales for Call of Duty especially, it's just franchise fatigue. They don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel, but they need to maybe look at where the direction the next game's going to go, and they need to think about giving the franchise a rest. I mean, look at Assassin's Creed, they've given that a rest.
Yeah.
But going back to what we said previously about, these AAA titles being Watch Dogs, Battlefield 1, and Titanfall 2 selling poorly, I think Battlefield 1's done pretty good. I think that's probably the one title that's done better than the rest. It still hasn't exploded in the same probably sense that they were hoping it would.
Yeah.
But when you look at Titanfall 2 as well, I think my theory there is, like, in the article he mentioned sequelitis. And about, are there too many sequels? Is this one of the reasons why games aren't selling as well as what they could be?
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily agree with that with Titanfall 2. I mean, yes, it might play a factor, but I think what's happened with Titanfall 2 is a lot of people missed the boat with Titanfall 1. It came out on the original Xbox. I meant the original Xbox One, to clarify.
Yes.
And I think it came out at a time where the install base was extremely small. Like, we were probably looking at sub 5 million units. I mean, the system had been out, I think it was 2 months at the time of Titanfall 1's release. So how many people look at Titanfall 2 and go, I'm not quite sure what this is about, because it's been about 3 years. Can't really remember what it's about. It's about giant mechs. Didn't play the first one. And the advertising and the hype campaign for Titanfall 2 kind of got buried in Call of Duty and Battlefield 1, so the information hasn't quite reached everyone as to what exactly Titanfall 2 is, to kind of grab those people that might have missed number 1.
They certainly failed in terms of marketing, but I mean, the release date of that game was one of the biggest factors, because it was squeezed between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty. That didn't help it. Another thing is, you sort of made a point which was raised in the article, which was the reputation of the first game affected the sales of the second one. And what happened to Titanfall was, like, its player base dropped off very, very quickly, if I remember rightly, on the first game.
Yeah,
and a lot of people were thinking, well, should I bother picking up this sequel, because isn't the same thing going to happen that it did with the first game? And the guy mentioned Watch Dogs, and the first Watch Dogs, and how bad it was compared to what was actually promised by Ubisoft. Sound familiar? Over-promising on a game. But it's a shame, because Watch Dogs 2 is a great game and I've been enjoying it a lot, but I think it hasn't helped. The first game hasn't helped its sales.
And then you sandwich that game between two massive franchises, and what hope do you have, really?
Yeah.
And there was also a certain amount of backlash as well amongst the Xbox community, or shall I say the fanboys, the people who saw it as an exclusive and then got butthurt because it had moved over to PlayStation as well. Well, they're just trying to make sales,
Well, yeah.
I mean, if it comes out on the Xbox and it comes out on the PlayStation as well, and you've got an Xbox. What's the problem? You know, you still play it on your Xbox. Why?
Well,
I just,
yeah,
you know,
I don't get that.
We're about to get some massive fanboy rage right now. I'm going to say something. So if you're a fanboy, I suggest you skip a minute on. But if Halo 6 came out on PS4, I would buy it on PS4 because I prefer that system and I love Halo.
I wish it would come out on PS4 because I'd be able to play it then. Without having to spend £250 on an Xbox.
I'd buy it on Xbox and then go and put it on my computer and play it via crossplay.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah, that sounds about right. You'd spend the first 48 hours tinkering the graphics and then you'd be ready to play it next weekend.
Yeah.
Next year, more like. This is me we're talking about.
That'll be me soon if I end up getting a PC.
All right, shall we transition into our next topic, which was actually my topic, and that was the downfall of physical media. Now, I made a video about this earlier in the week, but I wanted to throw it out to you guys because I know you two have slightly varied opinions on this. And that is, with the PS4 Pro foregoing a 4K Blu-ray drive and the Xbox One S having a 4K Blu-ray drive, and both of these systems supporting 4K in varied ways, are we now looking at a future where, as far as 4K movie and content, like as far as TV shows and movies goes, are we looking at a future where physical distribution is now being phased out? Is this the turning point with the PS4 Pro? Will the Scorpio have a 4K Blu-ray drive, and will the PS5 have a 4K Blu-ray drive? Or is this the turning point now, do you think? Are we kind of blurring the lines now and we're transitioning? And how important is this? How important is a 4K Blu-ray drive? Because like I covered in my video earlier, in the grand scheme of things, you know, with most gamers buy systems for games, but on the side, you like to have the media device as well. Now, for me, PS4 Pro is the right system for me to upgrade to. I prefer that platform. That's the platform I want to stay with, but it hasn't got the 4K Blu-ray drive, so I can't upgrade to it. What do you guys think about that?
I think, on the whole, I think the gamer demographic is not really the demographic that is looking at buying UHD discs on the whole. I think because it tends to be a younger market, generally, I mean, it is getting older, but it tends to be a younger market.
I know I'm in the minority on this, but surely there's a little niche there that it's going to affect.
Yeah, absolutely. Me.
Yeah. You and I are the only two people. Grant thinks we're weirdos. I already know he thinks we're weirdos.
I don't think.
I mean,
okay, I do.
if you look at it in terms of just pure capability and what can be delivered digitally and what can be delivered via a UHD disc currently, then if you put a film that's on Netflix in 4K against the same film on a 4K UHD disc, it's going to look better on the UHD disc.
It would wreck it, yeah.
Yeah, and equally, not such a big gap, but there will be a gap between the Xbox One S and a dedicated player, because the dedicated player is designed from the ground up to play those UHD discs. It's not just an add-on.
Yeah, exactly. Good at. Yeah.
You know, if it doesn't do that well, it doesn't sell. Simple as.
Exactly.
The thing is, though, just to sort of make a point, there isn't, with streaming, the quality is also affected by your internet ability, your capability, isn't it? Because you can get artifacting. If it's not buffering correctly, then it's going to affect the picture quality, isn't it?
Well, you look at the start of a Netflix movie or a TV show where it does play back, but it's in that initial buffer zone. It gets ahead. You know, it's quite pixelated and artifacty, and then it catches up and it buffers, and I admit, like 1080p Netflix looks pretty bloody good when it's late at night and you're tired and you can't really see much anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I get the point you're making, but it's sort of, I guess, is it a fair comparison? Because
I think if you're a videophile like Joe and myself, which I nitpick over quality all the time, and people think I'm a wacko and they think I'm nuts, but there's people like that out there, and it's not only the internet quality. Like, I could have 100 megabit connection and I could stream Netflix in the best quality possible that Netflix can deliver me, but because the content, no matter what my connection, is still compressed, it's still not going to be as good as uncompressed 4K Blu-ray.
No, I get that.
Exactly. Exactly. If you want to see what 4K UHD Blu-ray can do, sorry, marketing speak, the UHD is almost redundant as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, you know, that's what they want you to say. If you go and watch The Revenant on a UHD Blu-ray on a decent machine with a decent screen, it will blow your mind. It's phenomenal.
I'd love to actually. I like that film. Full stop. So
it looks. I mean, we were watching it the other night, and I said to my partner, how can a film be so gruesome and so beautiful at the same time? And it is stunning to look at. It really it's the sort of centerpiece. If you want to show people what this format can do, stick that film on because it's just amazing.
Just personally, I didn't enjoy that movie, but I completely agree with what you're saying. It's like a moving wallpaper. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Even if you don't enjoy the movie, it's just
you can appreciate it.
The visuals are amazing. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. It's stunning.
I think the cinematography in that film. I mean, I'm a bit of a cinema aficionado. I mean, I studied film and all sorts, and I know we're going slightly off topic, but the cinematography in that film was almost perfect in a lot of ways because of the way it was shot, and that really I can appreciate that would really come across if you had something like a UHD quality version of it that you were looking at. I can appreciate that people want that technically superior version, available.
Well, it's the best of both worlds, isn't it? I mean, can you have your cake and eat it too? Is it too much to ask for them to still incorporate a 4K drive if it means the systems are going to be slightly more expensive? And I guess we're at the point now where maybe Sony don't think it's worthwhile putting one in because majority of us don't really want it.
I don't
so
think
maybe
they do.
The PS5 isn't going to have one. I agree with that as well. I think you're right.
I can't see it happening in the PS5. No, I really can't see them doing that. They'll do it purely on market research. They'll look at the numbers and they'll think, well, how many people are actually going to want this?
Yeah. I mean, I compared this earlier to my PC tower. I mean, for years, PC towers, a lot of these manufacturers haven't been incorporating drives in their towers because they've probably done their research and they know a lot of gamers, especially on PC. PC was like the proving ground for digital distribution through Steam. And I think majority of the time people are getting the games digitally through Steam and other means like Origin, and your towers don't need disk drives. I mean, hell, even the publishers that do put out physical media, for example, I just bought Battlefield 1 and I bought the physical copy for PC. It comes on DVD. The PC space didn't even adopt. I mean, yes, you can get Blu-ray drives, but it hasn't adopted Blu-ray as a format. Otherwise, we'd be seeing the games on Blu-rays. So obviously, it's phasing out.
Do they have to pay a royalty to Sony to produce
Possibly,
it?
I'd imagine so. Yes.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
But it's almost like it's almost the elephant in the room as well as regards to what we were talking about earlier. With the sales down. If you're not looking at the digital sales and you're only looking at the physical sales, well, physical sales have been impacted.
Yeah,
definitely.
Because even if you're the sort of person who likes physical media like me, I see the games. I can pre-order it or pre-download it. Prior to release. And it's tempting, and I don't do it very often. But if I'm thinking about it, and I'm the last person to think about those kind of things, I want the physical media, but I still do buy a lot of stuff on digital. And
I do.
Yeah, I do.
It's going to impact the physical. And by the time we get to the next generation, if we do have another generation, I don't think physical media is going to be there at all.
Isn't it? Yeah, carry on, Sully.
Sorry, I was going to go back to, like you said, about you sometimes buying games digitally. Now, the only space that I purchase games digitally is on my PC through Steam. And I do that because sometimes you don't even know what you want until Steam has advertised it to you. So Steam is like this tool to actually delivering you games that you didn't even know you wanted. You couldn't just uncover these gems or titles by going out to, for me, it's either JB Hi-Fi or GameStop. It's such a clever mix between them hooking you and then selling you the content that you didn't even know you wanted.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say was, I don't know what the stats are, but I think in the UK it's something like 60% of people still buy the physical copy of the game, and it's like 40% digital. But I can see that in the next year or two, it's going to go the other way. So digital is going to overtake. The reason why I don't primarily buy digital, I'm like you guys in the fact that I will sometimes buy digital, and quite often if there's a sale on, I'll pick up something digitally because it's less of a risk buying something on sale. The issue in the UK is they're charging too much still on the PlayStation Network for digital copies, and it's way more than the physical copy. Literally 10 to 15 pounds more. If you look, you've got games at £54.99, and I think I'm not going to pay that when I can get it off Simply Games for £36.
It's unreal.
It's ridiculous.
It's unreal considering you're also buying a disc which had to go through a manufacturing process, yet it's cheaper.
Makes
It's
no
insane.
sense.
Like I told you guys a couple of months ago when I bought Gears of War 4, I broke my rule and I bought it digitally because I wanted to play on my PC. And the only way you can play on your PC is if you own the digital copy. But I could have got it Australian $79 at my game store, whereas here on my PC in the Microsoft store was $100.
Wow. There's a big difference.
Yeah. I actually think that if you had digital parity, the prices there was parity between the digital and the physical, I think digital would really take off because people look at it.
Kill it, yeah.
Yeah, because people look at it and they think, well, I'd like to get it digitally, but bloody hell, it's 15, 20 quid cheaper.
I mean,
do you think...
Yeah.
So I was going to say, do you think, like we're seeing now, this is probably the tipping point now. It's the beginning of the tipping point where the tide turns for physical media. Now, I think it's different between Blu-rays. I think it's different between TV shows, movies, and games. I think more physical copies of games get sold than what they do movies and TV shows. But that 60%, do you think those 60% of people know that they are paying a higher price? And if they do, does that just go to show how more convenient digital distribution is?
Well, it's actually I think it's 60% are buying the physical copy still. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It might be more level now, actually. That was the last time I looked at it. But one thing I wondered if we'd missed, which was the point regarding... I wondered if the reason why the digital copy is more expensive is because there's a reluctance from Sony to put bricks and mortar businesses sort of out of the loop, because they're reliant on them to sell their hardware still. So if they price themselves too competitively against the people that are still selling the physical copies of the game, so in the UK it would be Game mostly, they're virtually the only one left now
because they're getting royalty on
they're
Blu-ray,
getting the
aren't
royalty
they?
on the, but they're selling these console bundles, they're shifting units for Sony and for Microsoft. I think there's a reluctance for Sony to price these digital copies lower because they don't quite want to kill off that market yet. But there will come a point when it will tip over. It will happen naturally because the consumer will lead it that way, because they'll say, well, we just want the digital because it's more convenient and I don't have to drive 10 miles to the nearest game to buy it.
You would think there'd be a reason behind it. Yeah, it can't just be greed, can it? Well, you hope not.
I mean, I know that we've got a lot of people discounting physical copies on the internet. I mean, if I'm after a physical copy of the game, I just go to Simply Games because they will cut the game by £10 to £15. So it's a no-brainer, really.
To the second-hand market as well. I mean, you'd think they'd be actively trying to more aggressively push digital distribution, both Microsoft and Sony, because especially for a publisher's sake, because it kills off the second-hand market, which is massive. Like that eats a massive profit out of the publishers and Microsoft and Sony.
And I think the second-hand market is what is propping game up in this country.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think without that market, I think they would be I know they're struggling anyway, apparently, because less and less people are buying games in there because they can't compete with the internet in terms of prices.
They are, but if you notice now, they've slightly changed up their strategy where they're moving into more hardware, such as secondhand iPhones, iPads.
Yeah, they've done phones for a little while,
bobbleheads, merchandise, which is smart. You got to evolve.
There's a chain of stores in the UK called CEX, which my friend jokingly calls the sex shop. But it's they've done that for years. They've had that model where they will sell just secondhand games, just secondhand phones, etc. But they actually give you a really, really good price for a secondhand copy of a game. Say for instance, a game sold at like £45. If you took it to CEX, they give you something 38 quid for it. And you would never get that anywhere near that price in Game. Game would give you literally half of that. So, it's a very big market, the second-hand market, and I think it has a bearing on the shape of the way industry's going, doesn't it?
Joe, do you want to take us away with your topic? And that is, how often do we finish our games?
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I basically don't finish very many games at all. Over the years, it's become less, actually, and I think of the ones that spring to mind that are the most obvious would be the original Deus Ex, which actually the reason I never finished that one was because my computer died on me, and I was about... I suppose I was about 95% into the game at the time, and my computer went down and I never got the save file back, so I never finished that one. Fallout 3, I didn't I didn't finish that either. I got to, again, I was about 95% into that, and we moved house, and I've never gone back to it since. So, there's loads of games, and certainly sports games and stuff I never finish. Racing games I virtually never finish. But it's not because I don't want to. I sit down, I want to finish the game, but then something new comes along and it's all shiny and I'm off to the next one. And I just wondered if that's just me or whether that's something that's common within gaming. From what I can gather, it is fairly common. And I just wondered what the situation is with you guys.
I was going to say, personally, for me, it's genre specific. If I buy an RPG, unless it's, I know from the get-go that this is the bee's knees, I'm going to destroy this game. Like Red Dead Redemption 2 that's coming out, I know I'm going to destroy that. And in the past, it's been Mass Effect. If I buy an RPG because I'm curious or I kind of like it and I'm interested in it, chances are I'm not going to finish it.
Yeah.
And I very rarely do that. Like, very rarely will I make the jump and buy a game like that, because in the back of my head, from experience and past experience, I know that I don't finish these games, so I don't do it anymore. But with titles like first-person shooters or shorter, more refined experiences that I've had my eye on that I'm excited about, I'm more likely to take a chance on them because it's a shorter experience and I know I'll probably get through it.
Yeah. I understand that. I think I was going to say something similar in the sense it depends on the genre, but I suffer from the same thing as you, Joe, in the sense that I can get quite a way through a game, and in fact, it seems to be more of a problem I found this year than last year. When I first got the PS4 in 2015, I found I was finishing more games than I am this year. And my problem this year is I'm playing games like Overwatch which don't have an end, and because they're taking up a lot of my gaming time, other games which do have an end, I'm sort of getting over halfway through and then I'm going back to Overwatch and I'm not finishing the other game. So the way that I'm distributing my time in terms of playing games, I mean, I have finished some games this year, but it's way less than last year. I mean, I've finished narrative-based games like The Walking Dead Season 1 and 2, I think I've finished this year. I finished Deus Ex, Mankind Divided. I finished Tomb Raider. I finished Uncharted 4. But I still have a lot more unfinished games compared to ones that I've actually completed. And it is partly because my attention gets drawn to something shiny and new, like you were saying.
Yeah, that's it.
But also because I'm playing games which are like a service, like Overwatch, which just keep having new content, and because all my friends are playing it, I tend to sort of join them, So sports games you mentioned, I mean, they sort of don't really have an end. I mean, FIFA doesn't have an end. You just sort of keep playing it until you get bored.
That's true, yeah.
And that's slightly different again as well, because sports titles you can ground in real world. Like, chances are you're a fanatic with football, Joe, and you've got the hook already there before you even buy a FIFA.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe myself as a fanatic, but yeah, I do. not when it comes to football, anyway. But I do follow football, and you do get invested in it in that way. Yeah, you certainly do. I find, same as you, Grant, the games I tend to finish are sort of narrative-driven games. Obviously, they would be the ones. And often as well, it's to do with the length. I find because now I haven't got the time to... I mean, we've touched on this before.
Yeah.
But I haven't got the time to play through a game that's going to take me 50 hours. I just haven't. And often, because I'm playing it like an hour at a time, sometimes half an hour at a time, I find that I'll start playing through it and then I'll get distracted. And
you lose track.
Yeah, exactly. You lose track of where you are. You forget what the control layout is or whatever. And you pick up a new game, you start playing it and it's more familiar or whatever. And you want to go back, but you just don't. You end up not going back to it.
Yeah, it's like I said before, it's genre specific, but I think it's, when you look at games like RPGs and open world games, it could be good, but unless it's mind-bogglingly amazing, you know that you probably have another 150 hours to go, and you defeat yourself in your head before you even begin, almost, or like you're at the start of the game, you defeat yourself.
Yeah,
you do, because you see, I think we have touched on it, and I think you make a good point, Joe, which is that when you play games, you have a momentum that you build up when you play that game for long enough. And I had this when I was playing Bloodborne. Bloodborne demands a lot of attention because it's a very challenging game, and I found that the more I played it, I got better at the game. It took me a long time because it's hard. And then I put it down. And as soon as you put a game like that down, if you try and go back to it, you just get your ass kicked.
Yeah,
so
rusty.
it's you can only really go back to certain games, because if you leave them for too long, I think you lose that kind of connection. And a lot of people I've spoken to have said they've actually started games all over because they don't know where they were, they can't remember any of the controls, and they couldn't remember the story. So
I've done that.
it's like the other point that Sully made is games are just too long. They're too long, and yet people don't. We touched on it before. People don't have as much time, so why are games longer? It doesn't make any sense.
One more thing I want to throw into the bucket is I think it's also, like I touched on earlier, it's mindset as well. Now, a good example for me was whether it's just a certain time of the day or it's a certain time of any given month, what's going on with your life, how mentally fatigued you are, all the circumstances I think add up to how it's going to affect how you can invest into an expansive, long game. Now, a perfect example for me would be Mass Effect 2. It's my favourite Mass Effect title. It's one of my favourite RPGs of all time. Yet the first time I went to play Mass Effect 2, I got halfway through and I lost interest and I didn't care about it and I stopped playing for about a year. Yet I always wanted to revisit it, but I remembered it just didn't grab me. It didn't grab me. I wasn't enjoying it that much, but I gave it another shot and I went back to it. And it's become, from the get-go, from the second time I started playing that from the get-go, I thoroughly enjoyed it and I loved it from start to end. And I think it just comes down to where my mind was at the point of the year or month or day that I was playing Mass Effect 2. It just comes down to mindset, whether you can stay engaged. It's not maybe necessarily the game. It could be a personal thing as well.
I was just going to say, I've done that with books. I've picked up books and you read the first chapter and you can't get beyond it. And then you pick it up a year later, sometimes 5 years later, and it just grabs you. And it sometimes it depends on your mindset at the time, as you've already said. And if you're ready for that game at that particular time, if it's the right thing, sometimes it's an emotional thing. If the hook for that game is right for you at that time, and it will hook you in, and then you want to play it. I don't think that's unique to games necessarily, as I've said. The other thing I found though is that I increasingly don't start games because I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, I really want to play this game, but it's like however many hours it's going to take me, so I'll wait and I'll go back to it when I've got time to play it. And increasingly, I don't have time to play it.
Yeah, it's mindset is a big part of it. I think both of you have touched on the importance of that. Is the connection you have to that game can affect the way you enjoy it, the way you approach it, and everything. So it's not often considered, but the reason why we don't enjoy certain games at certain points is because we're just not in the right particular mindset or frame of mind that's going to help us enjoy the game in the first place. It's a big part of it, I think. I mean, I still need to finish Doom, and I got like 3/4 of the way through and I just stopped because there was this bit I couldn't get past and I just thought, fuck it. I mean, that's another reason I don't finish games, because they put these ridiculous blocks in terms of difficulty in front of you and you think, well, I can't get past it. What am I supposed to do?
In my opinion, it used to be a lot worse than what it is now, especially, or maybe I've just got better at playing games, but
I think it was.
Level design's a lot better, but I was actually the same with Doom as well. And in fact, this is a weird trend. I haven't realized this actually. Like I said with Mass Effect 2, it ended up being one of my favorite RPGs. With Doom and both Rainbow Siege, they are the two best shooters, and they're probably in my top 5 games this year. Both those games I put down and I didn't enjoy the first time around, but I came back to them, I gave them another go, and they've ended up being some of my favorite games.
Oh yeah, mechanically, with Doom is incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, it is. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. It's the reason why it's not in my top 5 is because it just gets ridiculous towards the end of the game in terms of what they expect you to do in terms of clearing out a room full of enemies.
Your eyes will bleed.
I cannot react that quickly. I'm 44 years old.
Close your eyes, Grant, spin around and just fire some rockets, and generally that's good enough.
That's how I play Overwatch. I just shoot, spray and pray.
Yeah. Just going back to it quickly, like I said, like this trend with me, some of these games that I originally couldn't get into and I didn't care about, I've come back to and I ended up loving them, my favorite games this year. It makes me wonder whether maybe have we as gamers gotten a little bit lazy? You know, if we can't get into it immediately, we give up because we don't quite get the game mechanics, or it's a little bit too challenging, and we get frustrated and we lose our mindset and our track, and we just give up. You know, whereas especially with Rainbow Siege, it's such a technical, tactical shooter that at the beginning I was getting creamed and I wasn't enjoying it, and I threw it away and I didn't touch it for months, and I came back to it and I went hard at it and I got into it, and now it's my favorite game. Whereas the same as Doom, like for me, Doom, in my opinion, the game started off a little bit slow. Like it took a little bit long before you could get your shotgun and your other weapons and all that. But
Yeah,
I kept hitting these roadblocks in level progression. Like I wasn't quite getting the mini map. I wasn't quite getting like how to open areas, and I was getting lost in the maps, and I threw it aside. But then I came, and then I came back to it and I went, all right, let's forget about the map and I'll just follow the waypoint. I started following the waypoint around like a carrot on a stick, and I loved it from there on out.
Doom was one of those games where I could play it for 2 hours on an evening, and I'd make like the minute amount of progress because I'd be repeating the same room over and over again. I'm thinking, how am I going to clear this room? You know, someone described it as one of the designers was influenced by Pac-Man because he said that it's like an arena. Basically, he wanted to create this arena which is like Pac-Man, where you're being chased by all these enemies, and you can only make a certain amount of movements in certain directions in order to, and it was quite interesting actually. I never thought of it like that, but when I looked at it, I thought, yeah, he's right. You know, it is like that. You're stuck in an arena and you're forced to adapt in order to survive. For some people, I think because of the way we play games, and I think you did make that point, Sully. The way games have evolved, we're very used to having our hands held when it comes to, completing levels or completing areas. And Doom just throws that out the window. Doom says, well, go on, get on with it. Go on, then let's see how good you are. Let's see how long you can survive. And
it's very old school in that way.
It's very old school.
It asks you to step into the room, and it asks you to be the badass. And if you're not the badass, it's going to kill you.
You have to be very aggressive, and it tells you to play that way. Basically, it teaches you very early in the game that this is how you're supposed to play the game.
Yeah, that's it. The only way you can get health is by being aggressive. Like when you're up against the wall, instead of retreating, it asks you to get closer and kill them with your hands. Like not many games will do that.
I mean, it's so funny in the beginning where he gets off the table and he pulls the monitor off. It's basically just, rip and tear until it's done or something. It's like the plot. That's the plot. That's it.
Yep.
Just made me laugh.
And that is why it's a Doom game. It really is a Doom game. It feels like the earlier Doom games in that respect. It's obviously brought it up to date, but it's got that same feel of Doom.
Yeah, it's not tongue in cheek, is it? It's something. It's something else. Like it's
satire.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, not like to the level of where Duke Nukem failed. It's got tongue in cheek, but it's also got just enough narrative to keep you going. But it has digs at game design, current
totally
day and age game design,
and very clever actually in that regard.
It says get fucked in a clever way.
I mean, the Doom guy's just like, I'm not interested in anything you're telling me. And he's like, fuck off, I'm just going to kill demons.
One of my favorite bit of the games is like, you don't blow up the Argent energy cells or whatever, and he's like bam bam, and he's just wrecking these towers. He just doesn't care. It's like whatever. No. Disregards everything that's thrown at him plot wise or story wise. Doesn't care. Just carries on.
I think there's a documentary coming up done by Danny O'Dwyer from No Clip, and it's about Doom. He's already done one about Rocket League, which was very good. He does these Patreon funded gaming documentaries, and they're really well done actually. And
I didn't know about this actually.
Yeah, I'll send you a link on Discord. But he used to work for GameSpot, and he just ventured off on his own to start this company doing gaming documentaries, and it's all funded for Patreon. He's got something like $30,000 a month donated in like the first month. So he's literally flying all around the world, spending the money, making no advertising at all. He won't accept any advertising on the channel. It's all funded by gamers, because he said there was a niche in the market where people weren't making proper game content that gamers wanted. You know, it's because there's no real gaming shows on TV anymore. He wanted the equivalent for the internet. So he goes around making these sort of documentaries on how these games are made, and he basically talks to the developers. And the developers, he said, are a lot more candid about the game because they feel they can open up and tell the truth, rather than feeling they've got to give like marketing speak about the game.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Yeah, so
God, I wish Netflix had a show like that. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, it would actually.
Just for ease of use. I mean, I don't want to see Netflix get it and change it and twist it.
There's a few things on Netflix, isn't there? There's like Bedrooms to Billions, and there's a few gaming movies. But there's a dedicated TV series would be great, actually.
Oh, it'd be amazing if they picked him up and somehow kept it true to what it began as.
I think there's
the only gaming program we had in the UK was Canned, wasn't it, recently? And that was a kind of review. It was on some. Yeah, it was.
Didn't know we had one.
It was the guy who does the Dark Room or whatever it's called. He does these gaming shows, and I forgot his name. And he's blonde-haired guy, they were doing this channel, and it was on some obscure channel you've never heard of, And a mate of mine put me onto it, and it was, it was all right, and it was quite popular amongst the people who found it. But then, for no apparent reason, it just got canned, and so that was the only actual gaming program we had on, review program that looked at games and sort of treated them semi-seriously. And now it's gone. So
there was one on BBC Scotland
ratings
called Video Guide, and it was from these guys who did Consulvania. And Consulvania was these two guys from Scotland did a video review show before even YouTube was around, and they distributed it through that forum that I was telling you about.
All right, yeah.
And eventually the BBC noticed them and gave them a series on BBC Scotland. So they made these like 20-minute gaming shows with reviews and stuff, quite irreverent. They take the piss out of a lot of people, like Peter Molyneux and people like that. And and God, he deserves it. But like you say, there's never been any mainstream content since bloody Games Master finished, and that was in the 90s, like Channel 4. In the UK anyway. A lot of countries didn't have any at all, not even America. They didn't have a dedicated game show.
No, it's weird, but I mean, obviously now you've got things like Twitch and stuff. It's almost redundant, I suppose.
Yeah, does that content belong on TV? That's the question, I think now.
I'm just wondering: is the popularity of Twitch, is that contributed to the fact that people don't finish games anymore? Because more people are watching people play games than actually playing them themselves.
Well, I know a guy who may not buy a game because he's intending it to watch it on Twitch.
Yeah. I think it's a phenomenon.
He just has streamers that he loves to follow, and he prefers to watch them play than him play it himself, which is fair enough. Whatever floats your boat.
Well, yeah, I don't quite get it myself, but
Yeah. Yeah, no.
I mean, if you think like Minecraft and how that became popular because of all the YouTubers that were playing it, and you get all these kids watching people play Minecraft more than they're actually playing it themselves. So it's like
yeah, I guess when like you're watching streamers, and let's just say you're watching them play through a popular new video game, I guess it becomes a entertainment value package, doesn't it? I mean, you're interested in the game, you want to see how the game unfolds, you want to see how the story unfolds, but at the same time, you're getting this added value of either comedic or interesting commentary while this person plays through. It's a unique value package, I think.
Yeah, I don't quite get it with when people watch narrative-based games though, because it completely spoils them. I mean, I can understand it when people watch someone playing like a first-person shooter that's competitive. I mean, I'll watch competitive Overwatch through Twitch if there's like one of the pro teams playing, for instance. But I wouldn't personally watch a game where you could spoil the whole thing.
Oh no, neither would I. But I guess these people that do watch these narrative-driven games on Twitch, that's where they're intending to consume the story. They're not intending to play it themselves.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think there are people that are doing that because if they can't afford a game, I mean, a lot of kids would probably do that, I guess.
There's I don't know. There's a different mindset as well. I think in the sense that we consume games in one way, but kids now are looking at games in a completely different way. I watch my kid, and he will sit. If I let him, he will literally sit for hours with the iPad on his lap, watching videos on Minecraft and things like Slither.io, something he plays, and Roblox, which is another one that the kids love. And they will sit for hours watching these things. And then when he's not watching it, he's playing it. And I could literally, if I let him, he would sit there all day and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's it. Like these guys that do play Minecraft and all that, and these other games, especially these creative environments like Minecraft, is that when you're watching these guys on YouTube, they've spent so much time with the game that they can dive into the game and expand upon the game and do things that go beyond what you're capable of doing in the game yourself. You know, it's not necessarily a lack of imagination, but the streamer's experience with the game means they open up more doors and avenues that you can't experience yourself in that world.
Well, they're experts, aren't they? And that's the reason why they're popular, is because, you know, I mean, they're experts at the game. They offer something, like you say, above what the average person can offer. And that's why they've built a following, you know, and that's how they get popular. So it becomes, you know, it makes a lot of sense. You know, I understand it as a phenomenon, but on another sense, I don't understand why people would sit. I mean, I can watch a lot of videos on YouTube, yeah, but I personally wouldn't sit down and watch someone play through an entire game on Twitch.
No,
you know,
no, it's it's something you can't pause, is it? Like,
no.
You know, when do you stop? You don't know how long you're strapping yourself in for.
Exactly.
When do you take toilet breaks?
Yeah, you know, I certainly don't play games like that anymore, so I wouldn't watch it on Twitch. You know, I take regular.
But you know,
breaks
there's a
from
whole group of people out there who never watch television, never read a book. They just play and watch games. That's their entertainment. And you know, it's not my thing. I love playing games, and to some extent, I'll watch people playing games as well. Especially sort of competitive tournament stuff's quite interesting at times. But you know, I couldn't sit there and watch it for hours on end. I'd lose the will to live personally. But I wonder if it's maybe a generational thing. I don't know. It's, you know,
I think it could be.
You know, we're all the wrong side of 25, I suppose, in that sense, and I'm rather too far.
Damn,
the side of
so
25.
am I.
Yeah, so.
Yeah,
guys lump me. You guys just. I see what you guys did. You just lump me in the same category as you.
That's exactly right. There you go.
Damn, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. You're with us now. You can't.
You are now officially old.
Yeah.
At least I've still got my reflexes, Grant.
Yeah, you got me on that one. Can't argue with that. Yeah, I think it is a generation thing. I mean, I think kids don't really watch TV traditionally anymore. I mean, by the sounds of it, I think it's the norm, like you say, to sit and watch videos on YouTube. And YouTube has kind of taken over. YouTube and Twitch have very much affected the culture of gaming in a big, big way. I mean, you know, we all know that because we've all got YouTube channels. So, you know, we wouldn't be doing it.
Shall we wrap it up, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys, thanks for watching episode 4 of Average Gamer. And as I just mentioned, go check out our own channels. We'll have links down below in the description for all of our channels. And please remember to tune in next fortnight for episode 5 of Average Gamer, where we will once again be bringing to you cherry-picked topics that interest us. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.